Good day to each and everyone. I am Rosnifa Macasendel, and for today, I'll be discussing our study entitled Ears on Listening Addressing Difficulties Through Remedial Strategies in the Classroom. So, we all know that listening is one of the major language skills, along with reading, writing, and speaking, that the student should master in order to communicate well and understand, especially in the classroom. Therefore, listening comprehension is one of the skill that the student must possess in the classroom setting. So many studies have investigated the reasons why students find listening difficult and how can this be addressed. However, listening continues to be a challenge for many students, especially those learning English as a second language. So, an important study was conducted by Shahriza et al. In 2019 and found many listening difficulties such as physical problem like poor sound quality or noise, lack of concentration, difficulty with the content being listened to, psychological stress, the way the speaker talks, how the listener feels, and problems with the language itself. The study also suggested the study suggested that schools should improve their equipments like audio tools to help students better understand listening materials. Another study was conducted by Munir et al. In 2022. They investigated listening problems in their study and found many problems such as limited vocabulary, low interest in English, pronunciation issues, difficulty concentrating, unfamiliar accent, fast speakers, and sudden topic changes. Many students also admitted that they lack confidence in their ability to listen and understand, which further added to these difficulties. So, to address these issues, another study was conducted by Putre and Fadella in 2019. They tested the use of an audio story app called Audiobook. This app this app included stories with both spoken narration and written text. So the students will listen to the story while also looking at the text. And after the researchers administered the pre-test and post-test, they compared the result and found that students showed better listening skill after in the post-test, proving that technology can be a useful tool for teaching listening in an engaging and effective way. So the purpose of this study is to find out what listening difficulties are experienced by selected grade 7 students, how this can be addressed through simple remedial strategies in the classroom, and to evaluate the improvement in the students' listening comprehension levels from pre-test to post-test. Moreover, this study seeks to answer the following questions such as what listening com- what listening difficulties are experienced by the 10 selected grade 7 students, what strategies are employed to address these difficulties, and what are the improvements to the students' answer after the remedial instruction. As for the methodology of this study, we employed both quasi-experimental and qualitative research design. So the quasi experimental design will be used to assess the effectiveness of remedial instruction. We will give a pre-test and post-test and compare the two. Compare the result of the two. And then for the qualitative methods such as interview, observation, and open-ended question, we will employ those to gain deeper insight into the students' experiences, perceptions, and specific listening difficulties. So to be specific, designed, we administered a okay. So to be specific, we made a questionnaire for the story called The Ant and the Grasshopper. We recorded that in the audio and then let the student listen to that audio once only. After listening to the story, we give them a pre-test. We give them a pre-test in which they will identify the elements of the story, such as the main characters, setting, and the plot. After collecting the pretest, we will ask the students what difficulties they experience upon answering the pretest, and we will answer those and or we will address those in simple remedial instruction such as question and answer sessions and discussing the elements of the story as well as elements of the story. And we presented another story called The Boy Who Cried Wolf. We also identified the elements of the story so that the students will be able to understand and how to identify what and how to identify the elements of the story. After that, we let the students listen to the audio again with the story The Ant and the Grasshopper and let them answer the post test. So the post test contains the same question as the pre-test. So for the participants of this study, we have 10 selected um, grade 7 students across Lanao del Sur. We let in which we let them listen to the story and answer the pre and the post test. So here is the result of that. Here is the result of this study. So we have here 10 students with their score in the pre-test and the post-test. We also have here the XY, and XY is the improvements of their answers. So we can see that student 1 scored 9 in the pre-test and 9 in the post-test, showing zero improvement. So for the student 2, the score in the pre-test is 6 and became 7 in the post-test with 1 improvement, and so on and so forth up until the student 10. So this result shows so the table 1 shows the result of the student's answer from the pre-test to the post-test. It shows that the student have lower scores. However, their scores improve in the post-test. These results suggest that they have shown significant improvement after the remedial instruction of teaching them how to effectively identify the elements of the story. Most of the students also demonstrate notable improvement with gains ranging from 1 to 5 points, suggesting that their listening skill developed throughout the activity. For instance, the student 9 and the student 6 showed significant progress, moving from low initial scores to higher level of understanding. However, some students, such as student 7, maintained high scores with no improvement, possibly indicating that they had already mastered the listening skill. Overall, the data highlighted the effectiveness of using audio stories as a listening comprehension tool. This suggests that continued use of such activity, possibly complemented by the differentiated strategy for advanced learners, can further support students' development and listening skills. The discussion of students' difficulty in listening comprehension reveals multiple factors contribute to the challenges faced by the learners. One common issue appears to be limited vocabulary, which can hinder the students' ability to understand and interpret unfamiliar words. Moreover, the respondents shared their difficulties in an interview conducted by the researchers. We have found four listening difficulties that the student identified. First, we have the English proficiency. The students respond that English is a complex subject for them, which affect their listening skills and comprehension of the story. They answer things like they don't know how to speak English and they knew little about the English language. They also said that they cannot understand English even though they tried to understand, and so on. So, limited vocabulary, grammatical understanding, and fluency affect their ability to understand and identify the elements of the story accurately. Another listening difficulty identified by the researchers is the difficulty in single listening comprehension. So most of the students struggle to understand and remember the story after hearing the story only once. They answered like, ang hirap pong intindihin, mas gusto ko po na dinidiscuss na lang. So they prefer the story being discussed to them rather than listening to the audio. They also wanted the story to be repeated um, again. So this indicates that their listening skills are still developing and may require repeated exposure to English. Their inability to identify the elements of the story after listening to the audio once shows that they are not used to understanding English even if it is presented only once. Another listening difficulty identified by the researchers is the challenges in in following the flow of the story. So they struggle following the flow of the story. So they also said that they don't know or they struggle with identifying the climax, the rising action and the ending of the story. This suggests that the student may lack strategies for attentive listening, note taking, and prediction of the story's flow, which is a very crucial skill in identifying the elements of the story. Another listening difficulty was identified by the researchers, such as the environmental distraction. The respondents shared that the noisy environment also affected their listening skill. I can focus on my work because my classmates are so noisy, pertaining to the students outside the room where the audio was played. This suggests that the noisy environment is one of the factors affecting the students' listening comprehension. And such environmental noise makes it difficult for the students to focus on the story, causing missed details and misunderstanding. Last, the listening difficulty was identified by the researchers was the confusion with specific story element. Some students are confused about the difference between various story elements like rising action, climax, and ending. They would answer that they are getting dizzy with the part where the problem started, which is the rising action. Also, they are having a hard time identifying the climax. So, this indicates that a lack of understanding of narrative structure and terminology, which impairs their ability to correctly identify these elements. To conclude, the story shows that the students' listening comprehension skills can significantly improve through targeted intervention, like remedial instruction of teaching them what elements of the stories are. Most students most students demonstrate notable progress, especially those with initially weaker skills, indicating that the effective indicating the effectiveness of these strategies. However, challenges remain, including limited vocabulary, environmental distractions, and difficulty in understanding story structure. These findings suggest that English enhancing these findings suggest that enhancing English proficiency, providing repeated listening opportunity, and explicitly teaching story elements are essential in supporting students' listening development. Continued focus on differentiated approaches and creating conducive learning environment can further help students overcome their difficulties and improve their overall comprehension skills. So, this is the end of our study, and here is my group members. Thank you for listening.